And this way of thinking leads to people abusing their bodies. What is plastic surgery? It's a classic example of the wrong attitude towards the body. A person may get plastic surgery, but they don't realize the body is always changing. A woman's face, it's always in movement. If you change the nose or any other part of you, it won't be able to move anymore. Everything you haven't changed is still moving, but what you have changed is moving by different laws now. You've had the surgery. 3 years pass and it just starts looking really bad. It was fine for a while, but then it got worse. Why does this happen? Because you didn't consider God's plan. If you dive deep into this topic and try to understand, why do people insert silicone implants, inflate their lips, deflate their cheeks? Why do people do all this to themselves? What for and why? It all happens because we are too convinced that this body is all we are. Women often don't know that the beauty of their face doesn't depend on the shape of the face, but on the energy that emanates from it. If you don't believe me, I'll prove it to you now with a song. The Vedas say that the energy of love is transmitted through songs. And when a person feels love, they gain knowledge. Through the energy of love, a person can understand any topic better. Let's look at one example. What does a boy love in a girl? If he says he doesn't like her face or her body, what did he fall in love with then? Let's figure it out. Some think, I need plastic surgery, then everything will be fine. That's just nonsense. Women do need to take care of their bodies, but by following a different set of rules. A girl once told me, Dr. Torsunov, you seem to not be aging at all. You don't have any wrinkles. What do you do with your face? I don't do anything with my face, my friends. That's why I don't have wrinkles. There's a certain law. If you do something to your body, say your face, then the soul's consciousness gets attached to the face. And the more the soul's consciousness gets attached to the face, the more sensitive the face becomes. The more sensitive the face becomes, the more it reacts to the weather, to nature. The skin gets irritated. Most face creams are not suitable anymore. I don't know which creams to find so that there's no irritation. And it's all just madness after that. It ends with the whole face turning red. But in reality, all you need is to not be so attached to your face. Just leave your own face be. It's good for a woman to take care of her face. I agree with that. But it's important to understand that there's a line that must not be crossed. This line is called the material understanding of life. Some people go crazy over the body, and the material understanding of life naturally arises in people at an early age, in adolescence. I too embraced this concept of life. I grew taller sooner than other kids because of my Jewish ancestry. People with the Middle Eastern origins grow up faster. So I was growing up fast, and then boom, all the other kids surpassed me in height. I thought, well, that's it. I've lost everything in life. As a result, I started eating carrots. I learned that carrots promote growth. I started eating carrots and turned yellow. Carrots contain a lot of carotene. And I ended up in a hospital with jaundice. They thought it was hepatitis, but they didn't serve us carrots there. And after a few days, I turned pale and was discharged. My daughter was going crazy in the same way. She said, I'm going to have plastic surgery. My nose isn't right, and so on. I found a doctor, a surgeon I knew, and she talked to my daughter. She said, listen, at your age, you shouldn't have surgery. The nose is still growing. It will only make things worse later. Now she has fallen in love and got married, and her husband likes her face just the way it is. He says, what, surgery? And with that, the problem was solved. Actually, she forgot all about it long ago, because her understanding of life has changed. Girls go on a lot of diets in their youth too. They think, oh, I gained 1/10 of a pound. It's the end of life. They diet to be beautiful. They restrict themselves in everything. In part, I agree with this. When a person doesn't eat too much, they live longer. And in this case, it helps. But if a person is always thinking about their body, then it's a problem. Once we had a vegetarian festival near Moscow. I went there. I'm not against raw food diets. But there were people there who were obsessed with it because they considered themselves to be just a body. So one person came up to me and said, you know, one must not only eat raw food, but also do a dissociated diet. He said, in a day, I do my usual activities, then I take a pause and eat a carrot, then back to the activities, then a tomato. So he is constantly thinking only about food. He said, I'm always thinking about whether to eat a carrot or a tomato. And I thought to myself, how are you different from a cow? A cow also wanders around all day thinking about what to eat. It too thinks constantly about what to eat. It's the only thing it does all day. This is an animal's existence. The material understanding of life is an animal's way of life. When the physical body occupies a person's entire consciousness, the person thinks only of the body, and they are no different from an animal, because their thoughts are constantly occupied with the body, and this is a problem. Where does it stem from? From the belief that I am the body. It's very important to understand. Second option, a person considers themselves not a body, but a psyche. That's good too. It's already a step forward. It's a higher level of consciousness. By the way, regarding this belief that you are just your body, this way of thinking extends to other spheres of life too. You all came to listen to a lecture about success. Let's talk about it. For example, if you consider food to be proteins, fats, carbohydrates, that's the material understanding of life. You don't know that food also contains subtle energy. If you think that your health depends on the balance of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates in your food, then you consider yourself a body. And you think that your body's existence depends precisely on chemistry. Chemistry obeys the psyche. Remember this. Psychic functions are higher than bodily functions, than the chemistry of the body. Therefore, if the food is not pure enough energetically, then its chemical properties will not make much difference. From the point of view of chemical properties, do you know what is best for a person to eat? Do you know what is the very best, the most balanced combination of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates? Human flesh. Did your stomach just lurch? It wasn't the chemistry that made it lurch. This is a different kind of thinking. This thinking is called thinking with your soul, or thinking with your conscience. It's a completely different stance in life. People with a chemical way of thinking engage in such things. For example, in Thailand, they started serving placenta as a meal. I won't tell you what else they serve and how, so as not to get you upset right now. I'm just talking about different types of thinking and where they lead. The same applies to medicine. If a person has a material, bodily way of thinking, they think chemistry will help them. And so, they take pills. I'm not against taking pills sometimes, but they don't help you. They just stop the disease from progressing. But helping is beyond what pills can do. For that, you need to understand what health depends on. And a person's health actually depends on energy. It's nature that gives people the strength to be healthy. If talking about what health is received from the 5 elements that fill the body with the energy of health. We will be talking about this now. It's a serious topic and people mostly don't know anything about it. Let's say you want to be healthy. You need to know which element is the dominant one in your body and which one is lacking. All diseases start from having too much heat in the body, too much tension, or too much excess weight. These are all different elements, an imbalance of elements. This is all treatable through contact with nature. We are unaware of it, so we constantly get sick. We think health means taking some medicine, some pills. It just numbs the body up. When a person is in pain, they take a painkiller, and there's no more pain. But that doesn't mean everything is healed. Your condition stayed the same. So, when the subtle energy body is the one occupying a person's consciousness, that's a higher level of thinking. Such a person begins to understand that proper health requires exercises, fresh air. For this, you need to learn to be active, energetic, overcome your ill fate, and take action to live properly. You need nature. Such a person feels the importance of nature and of life in contact with nature. They understand that they need to eat proper food that brings health. This is already an energy-oriented way of thinking. Raw food diet is a classic example of energy-oriented thinking. But if a person is only obsessed with food, their mind goes into the material way of thinking. And there is also the soul-oriented way of thinking. We have 3 bodies, the physical one, the subtle energy one, and the spiritual one. Being soul-oriented means to live with conscience, to live honestly, to live in a way that doesn't cause excruciating pain. Love, kindness, beauty, purity, inspiration, courage, bravery, these are all qualities of the soul. Our psyche does not change much throughout our life. A person may have a lot of energy or little energy. They may have good concentration or poor concentration. A person may have good memory or poor memory, a good ability to work or a poor one. This is all defined by energy. All this comes from energy. Good concentration, good memory, good health, good performance. We can have it all if we know that we have a subtle energy body and know how to refill it. Many people are unaware of this. The physical body is also important. If it's not taken care of, there will be problems. But the feeling of happiness is given by the spiritual body. We talked with a young woman for a long time before the lecture. Her husband thinks he's happy. This greatly concerns her. But he has no conscience in life, so how can he be happy? Happiness means treating someone honestly and being treated honestly in return. You have deep, pure relationships with everyone. This means happiness. Constantly deceiving. Where's the happiness in that? He can't even look his wife in the eye. Yes, from a physical standpoint, everything's fine. He found a woman with whom he, from a bodily perspective, experiences happiness and enjoyment. Some people think that pleasure means happiness. That's a big mistake. The same mistake as the one of modern civilization. Modern culture believes that comfort equals success. Let me give you an example. If I have a nice apartment, if I have enough money, if I have a high social status, then I am a happy person. That's the concept we're moving towards, and we invest colossal efforts to achieve this. Now, let me tell you something. Firstly, a person's happiness depends on the depth and purity of their relationships with this world, with nature, with people, with their loved ones, with God, the purity of their relationships. In my work, I have the opportunity to interact with very influential and wealthy people. I can assert that they do not experience more happiness, and often they have less of it. Imagine a life where you can't even spontaneously go out for a walk. You need to arrange for bodyguards and so on. What kind of happiness is that? Everyone sees you as a money bag. Everyone wants something from you. Is that happiness? Now imagine another person who can walk around the city freely and nobody will harm them, simply because they are of no interest to anyone. They just walk and nobody says or does anything to them. They have more contact with this world. So it's a double-edged sword. Such people do have more comfort, tasty food. But again, about tasty food, I'm not suggesting anything, I'm just contemplating what happiness is. Take a simple person who's very hungry. They take a piece of bread, fresh milk, eat it, and feel an amazing taste. It feels so good to them. A second scenario. A person is overfed, has everything and thinks, what else can I eat? I don't even know anymore. And whatever they eat, it tastes bland because they need to fast to feel the taste again. But they can't fast because comfort destroys a person's psyche. It makes them comatose and weak-willed. Some scientists conducted an experiment. This is verified. They created complete comfort for rats. Everything they wanted, they had it. Rat happiness was instantly available whenever they wanted it. Do you know what happened to them? Within 4 generations, all those rats died out. Now, consumerism culture tells us it's impossible to live without a fridge, without a washing machine. I'm not suggesting you live without a fridge, I'm talking about what we focus our minds on. Such focus of consciousness ultimately leads to you having no money, no health, and no success. You get the opposite results. People get caught up in the system thinking only about work, home, then again home. They get exhausted both physically and mentally from this, because they live an incomplete, incorrect life. As a result, people can't stand to look at each other after living 5-6 years with each other. It starts with the family breaking down first. A person loses the most precious thing, their spouse and children. They lose relatives. Really. Then this destruction destroys their belongings. Their apartment or house gets split due to divorce, and so on. A person gradually loses everything in life. A person is not filled with the energy of nature, the energy of love, the energy of God. They are constantly in the pursuit of comfort and live for it. There are 4 stages of human activity that every person goes through gradually, not in 1 year, but gradually. First stage, I like everything, everything will be fine. Second stage, I'm tired. Third stage, a crisis, I can't live like this anymore. And fourth stage, either you change your life or you spiral down and end up in a psychiatric hospital. A person works 3 jobs. For what purpose? They think that they will increase their living space and then they will be so happy. Not at all. I know people with huge living spaces and no happiness at all. Happiness, I repeat, depends on your relationship with this world, and it is achievable in a completely different way. You can become happy right now in the same space you have. And to dedicate your entire life to having a slightly bigger apartment means exactly the wrong thinking that destroys life. I'm not against having an apartment. A big apartment is achievable. If we sort things out and start living slightly differently, then everything will change in our lives. Let's move on. The 3 bodies. As for the physical body, I won't tell you more except that it needs specific energy for its maintenance. If we don't give it the energy of nature, it will inevitably fall apart. Our lifespan in this body will be reduced. Now, how is the subtle energy body structured? The subtle energy body has three very fundamental functions. These functions need to be deeply understood to figure out what's happening with you. We will be talking about this, how to diagnose yourself and improve the situation. The first function of the subtle energy body is called manas in Sanskrit, or the mind. The mind means not only thinking, it's a more global function. The subtle energy body permeates our entire physical body, as well as all of our relationships with different people. All our interactions in this world happen because of the subtle energy body. The subtle energy body has two types of channels. They flow along the entire physical body, providing it with the energy of happiness, or the energy of prana, or the life force energy as it's called in Sanskrit. Prana means life force. To put it simply, it's the energy of happiness. What does our body need so that it can continue living and be healthy? It needs the energy of happiness. The energy of happiness that is supplied to the body is divided into 5 types. It's the energy of the sun or fire, the energy of fresh air or prana energy, the energy of earth, of water, and the energy of space as such. We are not aware of this. When a person is confined to a small space, they restrict certain subtle energy functions. Why do we say sometimes, I can't stay inside anymore, I want to go out? Because we lack certain energy, and we need to be aware of this. We also need to know the consequences of this energy lack. The subtle energy body has 2 types of channels. I don't know if you need these Sanskrit terms or not, but just in case, I'll mention them so you don't think I made them up. The first type of channel is called shrotas. They are designed to maintain the life of the physical body. When an embryo develops, this development occurs along the shrotas, these thin invisible channels. In other words, they serve as the blueprint for the physical body. In a tiny seed of a tree, there is a complete blueprint of the whole tree and even its process of development. Similarly, the blueprint for a child's development is found in these subtle energy channels. Scientists still can't explain why the neural tube forms early on in different places. It's also unclear how it then connects into a single system. For example, if people want to dig a pipeline ditch in the ground, they need a blueprint. Without a blueprint, they simply won't connect the pipes, because it's a 3-dimensional space, and pipes need to be connected precisely. Or say, when you build a building, you build it from all sides at once, not just one, and it all matches up exactly. Similarly, our body is formed. There is a subtle energy blueprint along which cells develop and grow, just so you know. There are ways to influence this blueprint. For instance, what are prenatal anomalies? Prenatal anomalies are blueprint anomalies. Ancient doctors. The word ancient to us means they were primitive, not very smart. But in reality, that's not the case. 5,000 years ago, scriptures were written that explained how to treat prenatal anomalies through diagnostics. Pulse diagnostics was performed to determine anomalies in the child. Since the shrotas can be influenced by certain sound vibrations, that means that their structure can be changed. Doctors created sound vibrations and changed the structure of the shrotas. And for example, an intestinal blockage or some other blockage would dissolve. Imagine how simple it was to treat people, knowing how the human body is designed, and how hard it is to treat it now. Because when a shrotas is disrupted, you perform surgery, the intestine is restored, but then it reverts back to its condition. And again, there is a blockage in it. This is a disruption at a subtle energy level. It needs to be treated there. The next part of the human subtle structure are the nadis. These are subtle energy channels that support the mental functions of a person. They permeate the body and extend outward, connecting with everyone who is connected with us. As the song goes, out of high love, we must remember that we are tied for life with invisible threads to our loved ones. These invisible threads really exist. These nadis, the subtle energy channels, emerge from the heart and connect with another person's heart. By observing the state of these subtle energy channels, the nadis, I can diagnose relationships. A woman starts saying, "My husband and I immediately say, "A bad relationship." She responds, "That's right, Dr. Torsunov, how did you know?" I look at these channels and everything there is disrupted, clogged. There are no healthy relationships in there. Through these channels, the nadis, we connect with everyone, and that's how we exchange the energy of happiness with each other. There are 2 types of mothers in terms of how they react to their child's illness. Let's make an example. Moms, raise your hand if your child is sick but you're not worried. This means your subtle energy channels are strong enough to help your child recover at a subtle energy level. That's why. Now, mothers who worry when their child is sick, raise your hand. This means you lack the strength to help your child. And worrying isn't a way to help. It's just a signal. Some think, I worry, so I'm helping. No, that's not how you help. Worrying means you lack energy. It means you need to learn to replenish it so you have enough of it. We'll talk about that too. Nadis, the subtle energy channels, are a very important topic. We'll talk about it in detail now. Why is it important? In today's lecture, we're discussing success. The central channel, the most important subtle energy nadi, is called Sushumna. This subtle channel is essential for life. In other words, when the soul really wants to live, this channel activates, fills up with power, and energizes all other channels. If the soul doesn't want to live, then everything occurs in a different way. So, when a person was severely sick, the ancient doctors didn't first ask about how they poop, pee, eat, or have sex. They first asked the person, do you want to live or not? And if the person said, I don't want to live, they wouldn't ask anything else. They tried to awaken the desire to live in that person with their love and kindness, because the desire to live is always there in the heart of a person. But because the world seems so bad to them, they think, I don't want to live here. So it's not that they don't want to live, they just don't want to live here. And the doctors tried to prove to the patient that they need to keep living right where they are. And when a person's desire to live emerged, then all their bodily functions like peeing and pooping started working on their own. Because the Sushumna channel was activated and the whole body was filled with energy. When it is filled with energy, it becomes functional. Now you might say, Dr. Torsunov, I want to live. The question is, how much? Let's check how much you really want to live. If you can't get up early from the bed, if you binge eat at night, if you can't control your anger, if you can't overcome your bad habits, if you can't get rid of negative thoughts, then that's called a wish to die, not a wish to live. It stems from misunderstanding the very nature of a person's life. The nature of human life is not to relax. There are two ways a person can live correctly, make their life successful and prolong it. If a person becomes too successful, in our case, too successful means, why would I go to Tahiti? The food is good here too. This is from a Russian cartoon. There's a fat cat lying there, it can't move. It's never been to Tahiti, or gone anywhere for that matter, because they overfed him. That's the problem. People think that the good life is when everything's fine. Hello, is everything fine? All good. Well, that's good. And we continue waiting for death. But a good life means quite the opposite. If a person makes themselves get up early, they'll live longer. If you don't, you won't live long. Moving on. Life. How much do you want to live? That's the question. Either a person accepts their fate or, for instance, a person says, I don't want to live in this city, Dr. Torsunov, I want to go to Italy. Okay, I don't mind. I'll tell you a story from my own life. In 2010, when I was giving lectures in Moscow, a woman said to me, Dr. Torsunov, 2012 will be the end of the world. Everyone has heard of it except you. I said, all right, I don't mind. Let's consider two ways of thinking in this case. First option, if 2012 is the end of the world, I don't know if I'll perish or not. Why should I worry then? At least I can still live for 2 more years. Second option, if you worry for all these 2 years, what kind of life is that? Imagine if there's no end of the world in the end. You spend 2 years worrying, and everything's fine in the end. There was actually an end of the world in 2012. Exactly on the day they predicted, we had an end of the world. In the village where I live, they cut off electricity for 2 hours, so we could see no world. Then the world began anew. I'm talking about the mindset. If a person lives in intense fear, or on the contrary, they can't accept the present, they can't accept their fate, then they can't experience happiness either. Because if you don't accept your city, you don't accept your job, you don't accept your man, then these areas of life can't bring happiness to you. You say, when I get to Italy, then I'll be happy. All right, but this means that all this time, until you get to Italy, there will be no happiness for you. So it's better to rejoice now living in your city. Otherwise, there will be no happiness. Because if a person doesn't accept their fate, their subtle energy body doesn't function properly. Neither does the physical body. You need to accept your life as it is. Acceptance gives the opportunity to live, to breathe normally. This is what success is. to live normally. Because if you can't live well, it's the end of you. Your strength runs out. You have no possibility to work. You have no possibility of living with your husband. So you are fixated on the future. You just want this and that in the future, and that's it. That's how the subtle energy body works. Sushumna means the central channel, in which there is either a wish to live or to die. Everything depends on how you understand life. If you perceive life in such a way that you always want to live, then you will live long. But if you think you need a quick fix and you're waiting for that, then you won't live long, because that destroys life. Asceticism practice enables you to do that. But it needs to be joyful asceticism practice, not dull and forced. Then it prolongs a person's life and makes them successful. I am talking about our central subtle energy channel, because that's how it works. We can't do anything about it. Let's move on. There are two more smaller channels on the sides. One is called Ida Nadi. Nadi means energy channel. The other one is Pingala Nadi. Ida Nadi is the energy channel that flows on the left side. It gives a person a sense of fullness of life. So there are 3 channels in total. One along the spine. The others go along the ganglia on the sides of the spine. These ganglia are the basis of life in the spine at the energy level, and these channels nourish them with life. The channel on the left side provides a person with an entire layer of existence. What kind of layer is that? It's a layer of close relationships, of kindness. It's the possibility of having familial bonds. It's the desire to take care of your loved ones. It's tenderness, gentleness in relationships. Everything depends on this channel. If it is filled, a person can be gentle, kind, caring, sincere, faithful. All these energies flow through this channel. I told you that the soul is made up of 3 things: knowledge, love, and eternity. These 3 components are connected to a certain part of the subtle energy body, which we'll discuss. This part is called intelligence. There's mind and there's intelligence. There's a sense of self-worth. These are the 3 parts of the subtle energy body. We're only talking about the mind right now. So, the first center of intelligence is located in the forehead area. The energy of intelligence goes there from the soul. The energy of love goes to the heart area. The energy of eternity, or the desire to live, goes to the groin area. Now, a person can decide that they want to have tenderness, kindness, love, happiness in general, close relationships in their life. When do you think this decision is made? This decision is made before the physical body is conceived. In the subtle energy body, a person thinks, I want this in life. I'm so tired. I need love, harmony. I just can't live without them. And this attitude in the psyche makes it so that the chromosomes begin to form a female body. A woman's existence, the main task of a woman's life, are determined before birth. It's love, tenderness, beauty, kindness, happiness. You might ask, don't men experience happiness? They do, but in a slightly different way. In fact, in women, the Ida Nadi channel is 3 times more active than in men. 3 times. And this forms the female body itself. How does it form? Tenderness permeates the female body, making it gentle. You can't just crack it like that. It will say, are you crazy? This is a female body, not a male body. People are often unaware of this. When a woman is spanking her child, her hand already hurts from hitting, but he endures it. She asks, does it hurt? He says no. She thinks, what's the matter? Is he made of iron or something? Or the son is running, then falls, hits his head on the floor. He gets up and keeps running. The mom goes, oh my God, my baby, are you hurt? He's like, huh? He's in a male body. It's a different body. It's not female. I also tell men, a female body is not a male body. You need to touch it differently. This determines a person's whole life. If a woman doesn't have deep relationships with people, if she doesn't have tenderness in her life, no love, no harmony with this world, then she cannot be successful. She needs to first strive for these things. I'm not suggesting that you first get married and then get an education. I'm not encouraging women to get married right away. I'm talking about achieving relationships. For instance, if a woman has very close relationships, lots of friends, many loved ones, she can be successful in her activities and at work. Because she has a foundation, her psyche operates correctly. Now the second scenario, when she lacks close, tender relationships and is buried in work. And there, without a feminine foundation, everything in her life falls apart. Because if her Ida Nadi channel is depleted, and the male Pingala Nadi channel activates, even her menstrual periods become painful. She stops being beautiful. her lifespan shortens. Everything begins to deteriorate in her body because the energy is disturbed and the purpose of a woman's life is lost. Can you imagine what success will there be if everything is done not as it should be? The next energy channel is called Pingala Nadi. What is it intended for? If a person desires achievements in life, desires to overcome difficulties, wants knowledge, victory, strength, influence, patience, power, wisdom, responsibility, to be better than others, then one receives a male birth. Two things relate to these channels that people need to know about themselves. The first thing to know, and men also need to understand this, is that the main problem for a woman, her greatest psychological difficulty, what causes her intense suffering, what she can't endure, can't live with, the main problem for a woman is instability. When there's no harmony, no relationships, no love, no purity in relationships, no certainty, no depth, it simply overwhelms her. She can't live like that. She approaches her husband and says, "When you came back from work, why didn't you talk to me?" This means there is no relationship. He thinks, "Man, she's getting on my nerves. I'm just exhausted. I came home. Do I need to talk to her?" You need to talk because that's what she lives for. If you know this, understand this, then you can easily establish a relationship with a woman. Let's say she needs stability in everything. That means some certainty. If you say, "I'm going to work," then you come back and say, "Actually, I went to play tennis." She says, "What? You said you were going to work." He says, "What difference does it make to you where I went? I went to one place but ended up in another." She says, "I can't live like this." He says, "What? What does life have to do with it?" She says, "I need certainty." "What certainty? Can't I go play tennis?" "You can, but you should have said so. Or we decided to go to this resort, but now we're going to another one." She says, "I am ready to go there. How can I go to another place now?" Or he says, "We live in this apartment. No, tomorrow we'll be living in that one." She says, "I've gotten used to this one. I can't live in that one now." He says, "What? The other apartment is better. Let's move there." No. A woman needs stability. She can't get used to two apartments simultaneously. How so? The man thinks. It's like that. Her psyche is completely different. Or suppose a man makes a date with a woman and arrives 5 minutes late. She looks at him and thinks, "I won't live with this person." She hoped everything would be precisely determined, that everything would be guaranteed with this person, and then, bam, he's 5 minutes late. Well, okay, there can be some serious reasons. Maybe he was hit by a car or something else. She asks him, "Why did you come 5 minutes late?" He says, "So what?" That means he's clueless. She thinks, "Well, goodbye then." He says, "Why goodbye? I love you." She says, No, goodbye, that's it." "Why goodbye? Explain to me." "You came 5 minutes late." He thinks, "Are you serious? Just 5 minutes late and now you can't live with me?" Why doesn't she want to live with him? Because there's no stability, no guarantees whatsoever. You see how differently we are made, my dears. So, the main cause of men's problems. Ladies, you should know about this. The huge problem is that you don't know this. The main issue with men's problems is that a man suffers tremendously if he doesn't achieve seniority in relationships, victory over his difficulties, if he doesn't have influence in society, if he doesn't achieve physical and mental strength, the ability to endure situations, the capacity to be respected as an individual, and so on. If a man doesn't achieve this, he's shaken up, he can't live normally. And now a woman walks up to him and says, "Hey, what's up, my wimp? While other guys are all charm, I've got my bad luck charm." Like in the movie Love and Doves, watch how not to do it, how men are turned into drunkards. Two women, a mother and a daughter, turned their men into drunkards. How? They were constantly nagging their men. A man has two options in this case, either to reject the woman or become a doormat. It means whatever the woman tells the man, that's what he starts to think about himself. So, the man either hits his wife, forcing her to think differently, or leaves, or becomes a doormat. Being a doormat means becoming a drunkard, meaning she turned him into a drunkard. So you need to know how to treat a person. With a woman, you should behave like this. "My dear, everything will be all right." And you must always say, "Everything will be fine with us." Every day she'll be thinking, "Oh, awesome, great." And you can keep on living like that. There's stability, everything's normal, everything will be fine. Every day you need to tell a woman, "You're the most tender, the most attractive, just so wonderful. And it's so good to be with you, really. I love you so much." And she'll think, "Everything is okay, I can live like that." She needs those tender, attentive relationships. For instance, I came home from work and said to my wife, "Oh, such a beautiful dress you're wearing today. You put on a new dress, it's so great." She said, "I'm glad you noticed, but it's not a new dress. It's already 15 years old." But still, it was pleasant. Well, a man doesn't really see the dress. He sees the goal, not the obstacles. So it's just some dress. After all, he's doing big things in life. A woman should also understand this. You see, these two energy channels indicate how a person should develop in life. Until a man becomes strong and mature in life, he should not think about a personal life. Otherwise, he will be defeated in life. A woman, on the other hand, should think about relationships, about her personal life. Even if she's not married, she should create an environment in which she feels very comfortable and happy, with lots of friends and different relationships. Then, if she behaves like that, if she has such stability in life, then she will be able to easily progress at work. Do you want details, ladies? All right, let me explain the details. It's a very subtle point. Look, when a woman doesn't have friends, close relationships, doesn't have a family, where does she direct her desire for stability and consistency? She directs it in her work. There are no close relationships, no love, just business relationships at work. And there they constantly command you rather than treat you tenderly. You plunge in there, sort of believing it will help you in life. You believe in it. You go there, believing that the co-workers and the boss will treat you kindly, that it will be very comfortable and good for you at work. And all this belief is shattered before your eyes because the boss, seeing that you're all eager to serve him, hoping for reciprocity, instead exploits you. He says, "Well then, stay for overtime since you treat me so nicely." Or furthermore, if you love all your co-workers, they will be saying, "Help me, help me." And you see that everyone at work is draining you, and it makes you feel bad. So, a woman who believes in her work quickly passes through these 4 stages. First, I like it, then I'm tired, then I'm fed up, and finally, I'm leaving. She genuinely thinks that it's not in her nature to work there. The reason she's so drained and worn out at work is something else. She's not in the right environment. To understand this, let me give you an example. There's a fable in the Vedas where a crocodile fights an elephant. If the crocodile fights with the elephant in the water, the crocodile wins. If on land, the elephant wins. Why? Because land is the elephant's natural habitat, where it's strong. And water is the crocodile's natural habitat, where it's strong. Ladies, work is not the natural environment for a woman. The only environment for a woman is friendship, family, and home. A woman is strong there. At work, she relaxes, she feels good there. It's like a person going to a resort to relax, but not to live there. At work, a woman relaxes. But if you confuse work with home, then don't expect anything good. You'll get exhausted there, and then you'll have to leave. And in your head, you start thinking, this activity isn't right for me. It's not the activity that's unsuitable, but your way of thinking. You need to understand what a woman relies on. Let me give you another example for you to understand how your psyche works. A woman's psyche needs harmony very much, so when there's no harmony, she constantly feels anxious. And for her, harmony simply means close relationships. Here's an example. A hen, which by the way also has a female nature, she runs around clucking, bustling about in the chicken coop. Have you seen that? And the rooster doesn't bustle. Have you noticed it? He stands still, he's attentive, he watches over everything because he's the male, he's in charge. The hen runs around. But when she lays an egg, she becomes calm. And the farm owner doesn't even need to watch the hen house. They hear the sound and understand everything. I've asked the farm owners, do you know what that sound is? Chicken cooing. That signifies that family life has begun. It means the hen has laid an egg. She's no longer running around. She sits calmly and clucks. That means stability has arrived in life. You don't necessarily need to get yourself a little chicken. You can simply make lots of friends if you don't have a family, and then you can be stable in life. And when your boss says, stay overtime, you say, I won't stay, I'm tired. And he says, then I'll fire you. And the woman replies, okay. Do you think he will fire her? No. Why? Because she's so nice, so gentle, so beautiful. He won't fire her because she is a woman. A woman is valued for her beauty, not for how hard she can work. But if she doesn't consider herself a woman, if she hasn't created feminine relationships, hasn't created feminine stability in her life, then they'll treat her like a worker, not as a woman. And that means she'll definitely be fired or tormented, one of the two. You see, it's not so simple. Let's move on. Let's consider the man. Let's consider two states of life. A woman's state is such that she wears out at work, then starts smoking. There are many women who smoke now. It becomes very hard for her to live. She becomes harsh. Her voice grows rougher. Then it will be like in the song. And you're so cold, like an iceberg in the ocean, and all your sorrows are behind the black water. If a man is cold, you need to know that this doesn't come from him, because kindness is not male energy. It's the woman who is kind. It's she who is gentle and makes the man the same. But if a woman is burned out, tired, doesn't feel like a woman, then the man will be cold, because what is invested in a man, that's what he will be. A woman creates an atmosphere of love, not a man. It's her energy, it emanates from her and depends on her. Now about men. They also have two similar options. You see, a person is always drawn in the opposite direction. A woman is drawn to work because she relaxes there. At home she works. Can a woman relax at home? No. She comes home and immediately she needs to do this, she needs to do that. Home is actually a place for a woman's activities. At work, it's good for her. She works there too, but it's not a place for her activities. It's a place where she socializes with friends, engages in her favorite activities, and her creativity. It means she takes a break there. From what? From home. She rests from her nature. In other words, a fish crawls out to bask in the sun, but that doesn't mean it should live there. It should live in the water. A woman lives at home, a man lives at work. Remember this. His work is his environment, he has power there. At home he relaxes. Or does he work at home? When a man comes home, what does he do? He sits on the sofa, or does he think about what else needs to be done? Where have you seen such men? He comes home like a king, sits down, and that's it. But of course, if he loves his wife, he'll make a show of getting up to hammer a nail just to show her his love. So, here's something interesting about men. A man should always conquer everything. But if he hasn't activated this function within himself, how does he live? What happens to him? He relaxes, he needs women, he engages in numerous affairs with women. You see, everything has changed. The concept of life has changed. In the past, the words "a real man" meant that he won in war. A real man kept his word. A real man was strong, brave, courageous. That was a real man. Nowadays, suppose if in a company a man doesn't drink, they reproach him. They say, "Are you even a man or not?" Is this what nowadays constitutes a criterion? Yes. If he drinks himself into oblivion, does that mean he's a man? And if he doesn't drink, does that mean he's not a man? Look how this all turns upside down. Or suppose, do you chase women or not? If you don't have relationships with many women, does that mean you're not a man? The term man means the completely opposite thing. I'll explain this to you now. When a man is in his zone of strength, meaning he's on his territory, on land, and not in water, then he is very strong, determined, self-controlled, loves work. He's responsible, cheerful, patient, brave. He has a firm life stance, and so on. But if a man leaves this zone of work, where does he end up? In the woman's zone. This means women, wine, staying at home, he can't work, doesn't want to. So what does a man do in an unfamiliar environment? He sits watching TV, drinks, womanizes, and degrades. He becomes like a doormat, ugly and unwanted by everyone. He also loses his health and loses his very life because it's not his natural environment. Suppose a woman asks, "Dr. Torsunov, what should I do with my son if he just sits at home, doesn't want to go anywhere, doesn't want to study or work, just lives at my expense? What to do with him?" My answer is this. First, do something about yourself, because you've turned a man into a doormat. Ladies, remember, don't coddle men too much. They need it too, but not too much. If you're overly attached to your child, if you coddle him too much, you'll make a doormat out of him if you have a son. And then they ask, "What should I do with my son now, Dr. Torsunov? I understand. I made him into a doormat, but what do I do next?" I say, give him the whole world and close the door behind him. Let him live on his own. That's how he'll become a man. You ask, what if he perishes? Well, if you see that he's perishing, feed him a little, then again give him the whole world. That's how he'll become a man, because a man only develops through struggle. That's how boys should be raised. Therefore, men should raise boys, not women. Women spoil them. They can't raise them in struggle. It hurts them to watch it. But it doesn't hurt men. A man says, "Go and fight." Now, what would women think? "How can he fight, Dr. Torsunov? That's too much." All right, There was such a man. His name was Podobny. The whole world knows him by his surname, not his first name. He never lost a single match. And he wrestled with all the great wrestlers of this world and always won. Where did he get his strength? His strength came from this. When he was a child and other kids beat him up and he came home beaten, his father would say, "I'll beat you more." And he beat him even more. And he used to tell him, "Go and don't come back home until you defeat those boys." He had to defeat them, even if there were many of them. As a result, he became such a man that the very idea that he could lose did not exist in his consciousness. It simply did not exist, because he was raised as a man, not as a woman. And the same upbringing was given to the Spartans. Spartans aren't related to Spartacus. There was such a state called Sparta. In this state, men were raised in this way. A man lived until 20 years old, not seeing women at all. He was made a warrior. He had to live through serious asceticism practice. And then another 8 years he spent in battles. And then, if he survived, he started a family, had children, and sent his own sons for the same upbringing. And as long as this system existed, no one could conquer this state, though it wasn't large, because these warriors were invincible. Why? Because the rulers of this state understood the male nature. Even back in the Tsarist era, we had separate education for women and men. Women were educated in a feminine way, men in a masculine way, and people therefore lived happily in married life, because there were real men and real women. Now everyone's mixed up. In Switzerland, they've already abolished the idea of man-woman, parent number 1 and parent number 2. And I believe such a law has already been adopted in Germany. In France, right? Parent number 1 and parent number 2. This means the understanding of female and male nature is being ruined. Let's move on. So, there are 3 subtle energy bodies. There's the body of intelligence, the body of the mind, and the sense of self-worth in a person. 3 categories, and they are all very important for being successful, so I will be explaining to you all this gradually. An interesting function exists in the subtle energy body of the mind. Here, right in the center of the heart, on the subtle level in the center of a person, there is an energy sphere, inside which the soul resides. This energy sphere is the force that changes our entire perception of the world. All the actions and desires we have performed in the past are embedded in its shell. This sphere is influenced by all the planets and spaces, meaning the place where a person lives. As a result of the influence of the surrounding space, all these changes occur under the influence of time. In other words, when planets move and they too have a subtle energy body, the subtle energy body of planets interacts with this sphere, and certain energy particles enters the inner part of this sphere. Certain energy particles enter and exit this sphere, which have a colossal impact on our lives. These particles are called karma vasanas, or knots of fate. When such a knot emerges into this inner space, a person either looks at this world with happy eyes because this knot radiates the energy of happiness, or with suffering eyes, or in some other way. Our perception greatly depends on what we did in the past. The time comes and our misdeeds in the past emerge in the present, and we experience the consequences of it. It means a tough period arrives and this grain of fate emerges in the heart. As a result, it's interesting to know that this grain of fate begins to greatly influence everyone connected to us. So it primarily affects those who surround us, and we don't even know about it. And suppose, if the time comes and my husband must punish me, he starts to feel cold towards me first, just as it happened with that woman. But since a man cannot live without love, he's not a source of love like a woman. He's dependent on love. So, naturally, not feeling love from his wife, receiving a cold attitude from her, after some time he becomes depleted and the woman senses this. They have antennas, so to speak, tuned to such men, because the man starts looking at other women in this case. He needs their energy and they immediately think, "Oh, he's mine, come here." That's how a husband ends up with a mistress, because his wife can't give him this energy due to fate. As a result, he becomes dependent on another woman, not his wife. That's how this thing works right here. And what do we do about it? First, what a person must know. If one accepts their fate, meaning one doesn't rebel, one agrees with what's happening, this is 30% of the victory over fate. Then, if one passes the next stage, there are 3 circles of fate. The first circle of fate is within me. It means I accept fate. My attitude to it is calm. The second circle of fate is between people, meaning I can already communicate, accept the relationship. I can communicate with a person despite betrayal. Then the third circle of fate deals with the change of their conscience. It means the person makes amends and returns. How we usually react: you're leaving? Well, get out. Because we think that the other person is guilty of everything. And therefore we lose to our fate. What does fate do? Through pain, it always makes a person believe that someone else is to blame. Since one can't hurt themselves, a person starts blaming the other person, and that's it, their life falls apart. But if one understood that fate has an impact on their close people, one would not act that way. One wouldn't throw out of their life the person who behaves foolishly. One would forgive them, accept them, and change that person. Do you feel how important it is to know how everything happens? Otherwise, there will be problems. This topic is very complex and deep. I'm not going to discuss it further right now. I'm just giving you an overview. Let's move on. The subtle energy body of the mind has 5 senses of perception. The first sense is the sense of hearing. The sense of hearing. It fills the intelligence, meaning the energy structure that changes fate, which can influence this sphere. It changes the intelligence and fills it with strength. I mean the sense of hearing, not the ears. The sense of hearing acts through the ears when a person is in the physical body. The sense of hearing operates directly when a person is not in the physical body. That's why there is such a law. Raymond Moody, a scientist who studied the near-death state when a person leaves the body, examined more than 150 people who could explain what happened to them after their hearts stopped beating and the encephalogram showed 0. So all these people explained that at first they remembered nothing, then suddenly they found themselves above their body and they could see themselves, feel themselves. They could hear what people were saying and saw everything. What does this mean? That all senses were activated. The senses belong to the subtle energy body of the mind, and they live with it eternally. They do not die with the death of the body. One says, Dr. Torsunov, well, I will live on. So what? I don't understand myself. How can I be myself? That's the point. You will understand yourself the same way you understand yourself now. But the body will be different, and the sense of hearing remains after death. The sense of hearing fills the intelligence with strength and changes a person's fate. That's why this sense is the most important. If a person listens to someone who has changed their life and believes them, then they gain the power to change their own life. This power is called inspiration. Suppose if a person has quit smoking themselves and they talk about the harm of smoking, then you won't just know that smoking is harmful, but something in your life will change. You will gain the power to quit smoking by listening to this person. That's how the sense of hearing works. If you listen with faith, with undivided attention, or say, a young man falls in love with a girl, and the girl listens to him. He says, I love you. And she responds, oh, I love you too. It means his feelings are transmitted to her. That's how it works. And she starts to love him too, if she listens. Then he says, I don't love you anymore. And that feeling is also transmitted to her. Whatever he says, she perceives his feelings by her consciousness, if she listens. But if the man behaves incorrectly, she stops believing him and therefore doesn't listen to him, and nothing is transmitted to her. Therefore, she cannot love such a person. The sense of hearing makes intelligence powerful. Just keep in mind how important it is in our lives. And yet, we listen to all sorts of nonsense for more than half the day. Right, everyone should look at the flowers. Put them closer, right in front of me. They will be charged with your love, and then I will distribute them to you. The flowers will be charged. It's a fortune when the entire hall charges the flowers, and then someone receives them. You give me the flowers and I return them to you. That's how we exchange after the lecture. The next sense is called tactile sensitivity. The sense of hearing holds great power in the male mind. The second sense is called the tactile sense. It's also connected to intelligence and gives it purity or intuition, the ability to feel the situation, to understand what is happening. This sense is the main function of women's intelligence. In other words, the tactile sense or the sense of purity is the main function of a woman's intelligence. Therefore, if a woman feels dirt in the apartment, on her body, in relationships, it means she can't live like that. Her intelligence becomes clouded and she doesn't know what to do. That's why A woman always strives for cleanliness in her life. She needs purity in relationships, in her body, in her clothing, in everything, in order to perceive this world insightfully and deeply. Because a woman's strength is in her intuition, in her insight, in her ability to understand how everything is structured. It's very important for a woman to know this. Suppose she starts having affairs with men. She loses this purity and therefore she loses herself. There's an expression, a lost woman, meaning she doesn't know how to live. Lost means there is no stability in close relationships, because the tactile sense also signifies sexual relationships. It's very important for a woman to understand that she shouldn't waste her intellect on men just because they enjoy it. She loses herself in life that way. Women feel this in their hearts, but sometimes life deceives them, and they follow this false path of their fate, and then naturally they lose themselves. Pure relationships, sexual ones, prevent a woman from understanding how to continue her life. For example, a woman comes to me and says, I got involved with a married man. I don't know how to go on. I can't get away from him. I can't do anything with myself. Why can't she do anything about it? Because he increases the filth in her mind with his behavior. It means he makes her befoul herself every day, and every day she becomes like a zombie. So she doesn't understand how to live. She is ruining her life because her intelligence becomes insensitive, impure. She doesn't understand what to do in life, how she should live. The next sense is called the sense of sight. The sense of sight is connected to the mind itself, or in other words, to a person's fate, because fate resides in the mind. Therefore, by looking into the eyes, you can understand how a person lives. Willful functions are located in the right eye, as well as a person's will, their desires, their ability to win. If the right eye is dull, it means a person's will is suffering. In the left eye of any person lies their personal life, love, tenderness, relationships. A person's thoughts reside in the left eye. So if the left eye is dull, it means one's personal life is suffering, as well as their thinking, their relationships with people. You can see a person's life, their destiny in their eyes. If the gaze is dull, it means one lacks the desire to live. Their Sushumna channel is hardly functioning. So, the eyes are not the mirror of the soul, but of the mind or a person's fate. The next sense is called the sense of taste. This sense is responsible for a person's life force. Therefore, when a person eats deliciously, they are nourishing all their mental capabilities. Because food also possesses subtle energy. If a person eats deliciously, then all their capabilities are filled with strength. And a person's capabilities can be evil or good. Therefore, when a person does evil deeds or lives improperly, they crave food that is associated with evil energy. And if a person does more good deeds and lives correctly, they crave food that is associated with good energy. And the Vedas say that if a person just forces themselves to eat only good food, the one associated with good energy, then their evil deeds will weaken. For example, they might want to punch someone, but they'll have no strength. I mean, if they want to defend their homeland, that's a good deed. They'll have strength. But if they just want to hit someone just because they feel bored somehow, then they'll have no strength for that, because such forces are nourished by evil food. Therefore, you can change your character through food if you know what to eat and why. This is a different topic, which I will also explain, but not right now. We have online lectures. This is a hidden advertisement. We have online lectures. So, the sense of taste affects the state of our energy. And that's why sometimes doctors prescribe food with bitter taste to change the energy and heal the person. That means that not something tasty but distasteful food can heal. And the sense of smell is connected to a person's physical body, the sense of smell. What benefit can we derive from this? For example, if you live with someone and you notice that they start to smell bad, it means they're sick, seriously sick, and they need to be examined. They themselves don't feel sick, just the body odor has changed. This means something needs to be done. Of course, you don't need to kill them, but something must be done to help them. Or say you enter some house and it smells bad there, don't eat there. If you visit someone and it smells bad in their house, don't eat there, because you'll end up in the toilet. It's dangerous, because in this house your energy is incompatible with these people. You won't be able to stay healthy if you eat there. If you're buying an apartment, ask a woman to sit in the middle of this apartment and smell. If she senses something smells off, don't buy it, because the energy of that apartment is wrong, even if it's new. She can still sense something wrong in that new apartment. She determines through the smell the incompatibility of the apartment with living. And if you buy it anyway, she'll drive you nuts and you'll have to move out. Raise your hand if that's happened to anyone here. See, I'm warning you, women get attached to their living space. If she's unhappy there, she'll be nagging you endlessly, and there's no logic to it. So let the woman choose herself where to live. Otherwise, she'll make your life miserable later. So we've discussed the 5 senses related to the mind. The mind has 5 senses. There are invisible threads that connect us. These invisible threads are created by relationships and love, and they can get polluted. If they are dirty, the relationship with the factory director gets polluted too, due to the influence of fate. Time comes and the thread connecting to the factory director gets polluted, and he doesn't want to see or hear you. Other people whisper to him, and he believes it. And you think, evil people ruined everything for me at work. That's the wrong way to think. Your work was spoiled by fate. Time came and your relationship with the boss deteriorated. What to do? If people are mean, what to do? It's caused by fate. You need to learn to cleanse this invisible thread in your relationship with your boss, and everything will change.
What if you were the boss yourself?
Then fate might act differently. First option, it has an impact on your subordinates and they don't like you. Second option, other bosses above you don't like you. Third option, you don't like yourself. That's also the influence of fate. There's always a boss, and if not, that's the wrong way to think. Because time comes and some higher-ups arrive. You know what it means? It's the economic police. And you'll find out there are bosses above you. Well, okay, that's another topic. To learn more on the subject of health and healing of the body, please make sure to read my health guide, available for download on my YouTube channel or on my Instagram page. Thank you very much and see you soon.